A general would put on his king's own armor, ride out before the enemy, and die wearing another man's name so his king might live one more day. He knew exactly what waited for him. He rode toward it anyway, so that a starving, hunted rebellion might survive one more night in the mountains. Sit with me a while and hear of the wealthy lord this man died for, and the 10 hard years it took to free a nation. His name was Lieu, and by the end of his life, he would wear a crown that this same mountain hardship had forged. Let us begin in a kingdom already broken, ground beneath the boot of a foreign empire that meant to erase it entirely. It was into this humiliated, occupied land, in the hill country of Than that our story truly begins. In the year 1407, the armies of Ming China had crushed the ruling dynasty of Dai Viet and swallowed the kingdom whole. The Ming did not merely rule. They set out to erase an entire people's memory of themselves. Ancient Vietnamese chronicles, laws, and records were gathered and burned, or carried away to China as trophies. Vietnamese men were forced to grow their hair in Chinese fashion and ordered to abandon their own ancient customs. Heavy taxes crushed the countryside, and forced labor dragged villagers away to mine gold and hunt rare elephants for the empire's pleasure. Resistance, when it flared, was answered with executions swift and public, meant to smother any remaining hope of freedom. Some records describe entire villages emptied. Their people marched away in chains toward the empire's distant mines and workshops. It was into this suffocated, humiliated land that a wealthy local lord began, quietly, to imagine something unthinkable. Lieu was no poor peasant. He was a respected, wealthy Lord of Lam Son, comfortable within the new occupied order. The Ming had even offered him a position within their own administration, a quiet, profitable path of comfortable collaboration. Lieu refused, again and again, choosing instead a slower, more dangerous ambition that few around him yet understood. He spent years quietly gathering loyal friends, stockpiling grain, and studying the wild, mountainous terrain surrounding his home. He was, by most accounts, a plain-spoken, physically powerful man, more comfortable with soldiers than with courtly flattery. His own wife and household urged caution more than once, fearful of exactly what open defiance might cost their whole family. Word of his quiet defiance spread carefully among the hill villages, farmer to farmer, family to trusted family. By the year 1418, Lieu judged that the moment for quiet preparation had finally, dangerously, come to an end. In early 1418, Lieu raised the banner of rebellion at Lam Son, declaring himself Binh Dinh Vuong, the pacifying prince. His army at first was tiny, ragged, and desperately outmatched against the full might of the Ming occupation. Among those who rallied to him was a loyal, broad-shouldered general named Lieu, devoted beyond any reasonable measure. The Ming response was swift and overwhelming, sending disciplined armies to crush this presumptuous mountain uprising immediately. Within months, Lieu's small rebellion found itself surrounded, starving, and pressed hard against the mountains themselves. Time and again, in these early years, Lieu's entire rebellion came within a single misstep of complete annihilation. His followers hid in remote caves, ate roots and wild bamboo shoots, and went weeks at a time without proper food. Some accounts describe entire months where Lieu's band survived on nothing more than what desperate foraging could provide. At one especially desperate point, the rebellion reportedly survived for 10 straight days on nothing but the flesh of a single fallen elephant. Disease spread easily through these exhausted, malnourished ranks, claiming lives just as surely as any Ming soldier could. Loyal followers deserted in these darkest months, certain that this doomed mountain rebellion could never truly succeed. Winter in the high mountains brought its own cruelty, a bitter cold that killed as surely as any Ming blade ever could. Lieu himself went hungry alongside his men, refusing any privilege or comfort his own noble rank might once have granted him. Yet Lieu himself refused, again and again, to abandon the cause, even when abandonment would have been so easy. By 1419, Ming forces had cornered his remaining band so completely that total destruction seemed only days away. It was in this darkest, most desperate hour that Lieu came forward with an offer no reasonable man should have made. Lieu proposed to dress in Lieu's own royal armor, lead a small band outward, and draw the entire Ming pursuit onto himself. It would very likely mean his own certain death, in exchange for buying his lord and the rebellion precious time to escape. Lieu resisted the offer at first, unwilling to purchase his own survival with his most loyal friend's certain death. But Lieu insisted, arguing plainly that a cause needed its leader alive far more than it needed any single loyal soldier. The two men were said to resemble one another closely enough that, at a distance, the desperate disguise seemed almost believable. At last, with a heavy and unwilling heart, Lieu agreed, and Lieu rode out wearing another man's name. The Ming forces, believing they had finally cornered the rebel leader himself, threw everything they had against him. Lieu fought fiercely, buying precious hours, before he was finally captured and executed in his lord's own stolen name. Lieu, watching the chaos from a safe distance, escaped deeper into the mountains, alive because his friend had chosen not to be. He would carry that debt, quietly and heavily, for every single year of the long war still ahead of him. Not long after, a thoughtful, sharp-eyed scholar named Nguyen Trai made his way secretly to Lieu's mountain camp. Nguyen Trai's own family had suffered grievously under the Ming occupation, and he brought with him a mind built for strategy. He carried, too, a grim personal grievance of his own. His father had been dragged away to China as a Ming captive years before. He understood something Lieu's soldiers alone could not provide, that this war would be won as much with minds as with blades. Nguyen Trai devised clever schemes of persuasion, convincing wavering local lords and villages to quietly support the rebellion. In one famous scheme, he had honeyed words carved onto leaves, then floated downstream into Ming-held territory. The leaves declared that heaven itself had chosen Lieu as king, and Nguyen Trai as his destined minister. Superstitious rumor spread through the countryside like wildfire, quietly eroding confidence in the occupying Ming administration. For years afterward, Lieu's rebellion survived through swift ambushes, sudden retreats, and an unmatched knowledge of the mountains. They struck isolated garrisons, then vanished back into terrain the occupying Ming soldiers never fully learned to navigate. Winters were spent quietly recovering in hidden valleys, summers spent striking wherever Ming vigilance had grown thin. Victory came rarely and always at a cost, but slowly, painfully, the rebellion's reputation began to grow across the region. Nguyen Trai's careful letters continued meanwhile, quietly persuading wavering officials to defect toward the rebel cause. Farmers who once feared associating with rebels began, quietly, to offer food, shelter, and warning of Ming movements. Still, by the early 1420s, the rebellion remained confined to its mountain stronghold, unable to strike at the heart of the occupation. Something needed to change, or this long, grinding war of ambush and retreat might simply continue forever, unresolved. In 1424, on Nguyen Trai's careful advice, Lieu made a bold decision that would finally shift the entire war's fortunes. Rather than remain trapped defending Lam Son alone, the rebellion would march south into the region of Nguyen. Nguyen proved far more fertile ground, rich in grain, manpower, and local lords eager to finally join open rebellion. Local lords who had hesitated for years now openly welcomed Leloi's banners into their towns without further delay. Here, for the first time, Leloi's rebellion could properly feed, train, and dramatically expand its ragged fighting force. Craftsmen forged proper weapons and armor in dedicated workshops, replacing the makeshift tools of the rebellion's earliest years. Victories multiplied swiftly now, each one drawing more disillusioned villagers away from Ming rule and toward the rebel cause. By 1426, emboldened and greatly strengthened, Leloi turned his growing army back north, toward the beating heart of the kingdom. Ming garrisons across the countryside began falling steadily, one after another, before this newly formidable rebel force. Entire regions changed hands within weeks. Populations that had endured decades of occupation now openly celebrating rebel banners. Panic began spreading through the Ming administration, as a rebellion once dismissed as mere mountain banditry now threatened everything. At the Battle of Tot Dong and Chak Dong, rebel forces sprang a devastating ambush upon a major Ming relief column. Thousands of Ming soldiers were killed or captured in a single devastating stroke, shattering the illusion of easy occupation. Ming reinforcements were rushed desperately from garrison to garrison, never quite arriving in time to matter. Word of this stunning victory reached the imperial court in China itself, and the response there was immediate and furious. The Ming emperor dispatched a massive relief army, commanded by a proud, confident general named Lieu. Alongside Lieu marched tens of thousands of fresh soldiers, laden with supplies and heavy siege equipment. Lieu was utterly convinced that this troublesome rebellion would collapse the instant his overwhelming force arrived. His army marched south through familiar mountain passes, expecting only the swift, easy crushing of a minor uprising. Leloi and Nguyen, Trai, watching this advance carefully, had already prepared a very different welcome entirely. The chosen ground was a narrow, treacherous mountain pass called Kai Lang, hemmed in by steep cliffs on either side. Rebel forces lured Lieu confident vanguard deep into the pass with a staged, unconvincing retreat. Believing victory close at hand, Lieu personally rode forward with his own advance guard, eager for easy glory. Rain had turned the narrow trail to thick mud, slowing the advancing column exactly as Leloi's scouts had hoped it would. Nguyen Trai himself was said to have chosen this exact ground months in advance, studying its treacherous terrain closely. It was exactly the mistake Leloi's forces had patiently waited for, hidden along the pass's steep, wooded slopes. Rebel soldiers sprang from the surrounding heights, and the narrow pass became a sudden, inescapable killing ground. In the chaos and confusion of that narrow, deadly pass, Lieu himself was struck down and killed. Accounts differ on the precise manner of his death, though all agree it came swiftly, amid total chaotic confusion. The death of their supreme commander shattered the confidence and cohesion of the entire massive relief army. What followed at Zhuangjiang was less a battle than a rout, as the leaderless Ming force disintegrated entirely. Within Ming China itself, the news landed as a genuine national shock, ending any remaining appetite for renewed war. Tens of thousands of Ming soldiers were killed, captured, or scattered, ending any real hope of continued occupation. After 10 brutal years of hardship, ambush, starvation, and sacrifice, Leloi's rebellion had finally, truly won. Thousands of surviving Ming soldiers now remained trapped, starving, and utterly defeated within besieged Vietnamese citadels. Many of Leloi's own generals argued fiercely for total slaughter, a final, complete revenge for 10 years of suffering. Nguyen Trai argued instead for a wiser, more difficult mercy, one that might finally secure a true and lasting peace. Vietnamese soldiers who had lost family members to Ming cruelty found this proposed mercy bitterly difficult to accept. Lieu listened carefully, then made a decision that surprised and unsettled many of his own hardened followers. He would spare the surviving Ming soldiers entirely, providing them with food, horses, and ships to sail safely home. It was an act of calculated generosity as much as genuine mercy, denying the Ming emperor any excuse for renewed invasion. The gesture worked precisely as intended. Ming China formally recognized Dai Viet's independence, and true peace finally held. To mark this hard-won victory, Nguyen Trai composed a formal proclamation, declaring the pacification of the Ming complete. It became known as the Binh Ngo Dai Cao, one of the great founding declarations in all of Vietnamese history. Nguyen Trai's words argued that Dai Viet's own culture, language, and customs had always stood equal beside China's own. It declared with quiet, unmistakable pride that Dai Viet was an ancient civilization equal to any empire, never to be erased again. In 1428, Lieu formally ascended the throne, founding a new ruling house that history would call the later Le dynasty. The barefoot rebel of the mountains was now Emperor Trai II, ruler of the very nation he had nearly died to free. He did not forget the debt he carried. He honored Leu's sacrifice publicly and provided for the fallen general's family. As emperor, Lieu worked to rebuild a kingdom exhausted by decades of occupation, rebellion, and unrelenting warfare. He restored civil examinations, rebuilt shattered institutions, and worked to heal the deep wounds of foreign occupation. He faced, too, the quieter burdens of governing a kingdom, factional court rivalries that grew sharper with each passing year. Some of his oldest, most loyal companions from the mountain years found themselves gradually sidelined by newer courtiers. Nguyen Trai remained at his side as a trusted advisor, though court politics grew steadily more treacherous around them both. In 1433, after 5 years upon the throne he had fought so hard to reach, Emperor Lieu died a natural death. He was mourned deeply by a kingdom that remembered, still clearly, the desperate mountain years that had won its freedom. Leu's true legacy was never simply the battles won, but the 10 years of stubborn refusal to accept a stolen homeland. He was remembered as a man who chose hardship over comfort and who carried the weight of a friend's sacrifice for his entire life. Sadly, the peace he built proved fragile for those closest to him. Years after his death, Nguyen Trai's own family met a tragic end. Accused unjustly in a bitter court intrigue, Nguyen Trai and his family were executed, a bleak coda historians still mourn today. Yet the nation the two men built together endured, long after the court intrigues that consumed one of its founders had faded away. Today, Lieu is remembered less as a distant emperor than as the stubborn lord who refused, again and again, to give up. This has been the story of Lieu, the wealthy lord who chose the mountains over comfort and freed his homeland at terrible cost. Sleep now and remember that the deepest debts of freedom are so often paid quietly by those whose names history nearly forgets.